Here's how a person with the same income and the same amount of cash can build a property portfolio twice as large by using creative structuring.
This is general advice and does not take into consideration your objectives, situation, or needs. You should consider if this advice is suitable to you or your circumstances, and please read any applicable PDFs beforehand.
This person has $850,000 in borrowing capacity, and they have $900,000 in cash.
Option 1.
They go and buy a $1.7 million property. Obviously, part of that $900,000 is going to be used for stamp duty and other associated costs. So it's a $1.7 million purchase, and they've got 50% leverage, which is a very, very normal scenario. This would mean you are capped in terms of your borrowing capacity because the bank is lending you $850,000 and you're borrowing $850,000, which means if you borrow that amount of money and you don't change your income, they're not going to lend you any more money until you decrease your debt or you increase your income.
Option 2, which is better than 1.
We set up this little thing called a trust. Now, you should definitely go and get advice from your accountant about setting up a trust. But remember, don't ask your accountant about wealth creation advice because often they've created no wealth themselves. Back to the video. We go and set up a trust and we go to the bank with a $900,000 in cash and our trust, and the bank will still lend us money within our trust. They aren't going to lend us the same amount of money that we have in our personal name because inside of a trust, most lenders do not factor in negative gearing and they don't factor in depreciation, which means our net income is lower in the bank's eyes, so our serviceability is lower. Now, in this example, I have used $750,000 as our borrowing capacity inside of a trust as opposed to $850,000, which was inside of our personal name. Lower serviceability inside of the entity. But let me show you the really cool thing. So as we move through the bank, we've got our pre-approval for $750,000. But we also have our $900,000 worth of cash, remember. But we don't want to go and put $900,000 worth of cash in the entity and go buy something for $1.65 million because that would be silly. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we are using $750,000 worth of borrowing and using it effectively. So we only want to put in a 20% deposit inside of the trust and combine that with our $750,000 of borrowing capacity, which means we can purchase a property for around $935,000. So we go down, we use $185,000 worth of cash out of our 900 plus $38,000 worth of stamp duty and costs, which means we use $223,000 of our $900,000 worth of cash, combine that with a $750,000 borrowing capacity, which the bank gives us inside of our entity, and we go and buy a property for around about 900 grand, give or take, 935,000 with $223,000 at a $900,000 purchase price with $750,000 worth of borrowing capacity. We can buy 4 properties like this because $223,000 goes into $900,000 4 times. As we come down, you can see 4 properties, 1, 2, 3, 4 at $935,000 each. But you say, Jack, I've still only got $750,000 worth of borrowing. If I can only get one $750,000, that means I can't get 4 $935,000 properties. But yes, you can. You can see here, we have a $750,000 mortgage. This box represents a trust. $750,000 mortgage inside of the trust. And we are paying 6.5% interest only on an investment loan, which means we are paying $940 a week in mortgage repayments. That's a lot of money. But we have a $935,000 property that is yielding us 6%. You will need to get a dual occupancy likely to get 6%. Lucky we buy lots of those, which means you're getting $1,080 per week of gross rental income. I'm not sure about you, but I know $940 is less than $1,080, which means there is a surplus, income exceeding expenses. So as we go down here, we can see $940 a week goes out for interest repayments. This box represents a trust. Remember that. Interest is going out of the trust. We're paying the bank, but we have rental income coming into the trust of $1,080, which means, folks, we have $140 a week in surplus income, which goes to paying for expenses like maintenance, all the rest of it. So now, because this diagram represents a property paying for itself, and the reason the property pays for itself is because, remember, we have a $935,000 property and a $750,000 mortgage. We are 80% leveraged. This will not work if you are 100% leveraged. We go back to the bank. Folks, we have a trust that's covering itself now. Now we go back to the bank because we've only spent $223,000 of our $900,000 in cash, which means we have all this cash left over. Don't go to the casino and spend it all. We're going to buy more property, folks, all right? But the bank says, okay, you've got $750,000 worth of debt though. And you say, no, Mr. Bank Manager, I have a letter from my accountant. This drawing here is a letter from an accountant. And you would not believe it, but this trust is washing its own face. And the bank goes, oh my gosh, I didn't believe it. We have a lending policy that means we can exclude that debt from your serviceability calculations, which means essentially it looks like you have no debt in your name when the bank is looking at it. What does that mean, folks? We go back and we set up another trust and the bank says, hey, you've got no debt in your name. We're going to give you another $750,000, which means we can do that with our $900,000 worth of cash. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We now have 4 properties at $935,000, which equals $3.74 million. That is more than double $1.7 million. That is quick maths. When you compound $3.7 million out over 10, 20, 30 years of holding that property at 7%, as opposed to $1.7 million, it looks like a very big number. We have now 4 properties in a trust. We now have $0 in the bank, obviously, because we've used it all for deposits. These properties are all washing their own face, which means we actually can go buy another property in a trust if we have the capacity. Maybe rates go down, for example. If rates go down, that means serviceability in each one of those entities opens up. So as properties grow in value, we can go and access the equity out of the entities. We also still have the borrowing capacity in our personal name because the bank, with a letter from the accountant, says you don't have any debt that we will look at when we do policy, which means we not only have $3.7 million worth of properties, we still have the original $850,000 worth of borrowing capacity that we have in our personal name. So we have $3.7 million here, plus we can go buy another property in our personal name if we want to, or we can go buy more and more in trust. But the really cool thing is you can buy as many as you want in trust, or as many as the lenders will allow you to buy in trust, and you still have the personal borrowing capacity. And this, folks, is how you build a big portfolio. Hope that helps. Bye.